firearms were first developed, the people that were working on these things and shooting these things quickly understood that they needed to figure out a way to aim them. So quickly they started toying around with different sighting systems. The first ones were very rudimentary, right? It was just basically a bead on the front of the gun. After that, things started to evolve. They started to come up with different front and rear sight combinations. Maybe it was a bead with a notch, and those kind of evolved into the sighting systems or iron sights that we see today. But early on, they started to see some shortcomings with iron sights because the capabilities of the firearms themselves were outrunning the sighting systems. Then, of course, when it comes to being innovative and wanting to be fast and accurate when it comes to firearms, competitive shooters are always kind of leading the path with that. So about the early 80s, some of the competitive shooters in the open class decided to start toying with the idea of using a pistol-mounted optic. People were really kind of dominating in the open class of competitive shooting with pistol-mounted optics. Fast forward, and now it's gotten to the point where we are today with red dots. Red dots now, obviously very, very small, ruggedized, very accurate, very dependable, and we're starting to see a lot of advancements moving forward.
So one day the red dots showed up at the academy, and we, as new instructors, we were like, what the heck is this? You know, how long are we going to be able to sustain this? And then how do we learn this, and how do we teach it? And so we spent, you know, over a year just really stumbling through the red dot. How do we pick up the red dot? And how do we not revert back to those iron sights? We say if you're 35 years or older, you're an aged eye shooter. The difficulty in finding those iron sights is tremendous. And now with the advent of the red dot, it will resurrect your shooting career.
We're big fans here at the Academy of making people better shooters, and it's been our experience that people are just better shooters once they learn how to shoot with an optic.
I'm a product manager for SIG Sauer Electro-Optics. Product manager is Latin for taking credit for engineers' work. But seriously, being a product manager is a great job to have, especially at SIG Sauer. All the product managers are not only experts in their individual product lines, but really you need to be fanatical about your product, and I am fanatical about pistol-mounted red dots. What I am most excited about as a product line manager for SIG Sauer Electro-Optics is how much of our product is being made in our building in Oregon. The Romeo 2, the Romeo 0 are just some of our recent products where the entire product is put together in our building. It's not just assembled in the USA the way some people think that companies can get away with basically taking an optic that's been foreign sourced, putting a battery in it, sticking a sticker on it, putting it in a box and saying assembled in the USA. That's not how we do things at SIG. When a Romeo 0 or Romeo 2 has that assembled in the USA label on it, it truly means every single part and component of that optic was assembled and put together here in the US in our facilities.
And we started to really develop our pistol-mounted optics program built off of what the competitive shooters were doing. Then we merged that with what the military and police needs were. Initially, they were reluctant to go to the red dots. Now, it's been a tsunami across the country with police and military units making that transition. So the biggest hurdle that we have with the pistol-mounted optics course is we have instructors with 10 or more years of experience, and they've been taught to seek perfection. Top of the front sight, top of the rear sight, equal light on either side. And we're now trying to get thousands of repetitions out of them, and we say keep your head up, bring the dot to your eyes, float the dot, shoot the shot, and that's the biggest hurdle that we have. And we tell shooters in the class, minimum recommended training is 16 hours and 800 rounds. And it legitimately takes them that long to make that transition from seeking perfection with the iron sights to float the dot and shoot the shot.
So my first exposure to the platform was thrust upon me as an initiative of this is the direction that we're heading, put it on your gun, get good at it so we can start to teach people. I hated it. It was telling me things about myself that I didn't want to know. It made all of my imperfections blatantly clear, and those are things that I had to come to terms with, but ultimately it made me a considerably better shooter in a short amount of time. I wish I would have started sooner. Once we get over the initial hump of how to effectively use this platform, all the naysayers are pushed to the side. The biggest hurdles that we came across in presenting this to agencies or military groups was the same thing that we ran into with rifle optics in the early 2000s. What's the durability on it? What happens if it breaks?
Durability in a pistol-mounted red dot is not just one of the requirements, but it's probably in the top 3 requirements of what people are expecting out of a pistol-mounted red dot. So, you know, starting with the Romeo 1, making slight improvements, adding steel shroud that's optional with that optic, and then including it in the box with the Romeo 1 Pro, and then that evolving into the Romeo 2, and understanding that, you know, from the very beginning the Romeo 2 was designed to be drop proof, essentially. So, you know, shoulder height and higher drops onto concrete surfaces multiple times on a weight that replicates a fully loaded, you know, duty-sized pistol. That was where we started with the Romeo 2, and it evolved from there with other features, but it was always, from the start, the goal with that program was durability.
So back when I started teaching at the Academy over 6 years ago, it was very rare that I would see a student with a red dot on a pistol, right? You know, it had been my experience coming up through the military and law enforcement as well, where I was strictly iron sights on a pistol. So as things progress, we start seeing them more frequently. Next thing you know, I pick one up and I start, you know, using a pistol-mounted optic. And after some trial and error and then some training, I really started to fall in love with the sighting system. I can tell you one thing, fast forward 2022, on any given day, drive onto the property and take a class and look to see what our instructors are holding in their hands or what they have in the holster. Chances are you're going to see a pistol-mounted optic on the slide of that gun, right? And at this stage of the game, a lot of times it might only be 2 or 3 people out of a 10-person class that are using iron sights, right? And I've had classes, just regular pistol classes, not red dot specific classes, where it's been an entire class all using pistol-mounted optics. So we're really starting to see people start to run this sighting system. We now offer the opportunity in the Handgun 101 to actually shoot with a pistol-mounted optic towards the end of the class, right? So we'll have people learn with regular iron sights, then we'll implement the red dot, and then we'll ask the people after they've shot both sighting systems what they want to continue the rest of the day with, and pretty much all the time people are picking the red dot, right? They just kind of instantly love shooting with that red dot. From there, you advance on to the pistol-mounted optic 102. In that class, we really have a hard focus on the fundamentals of shooting. And then from the fundamentals of shooting, we move on to kind of red dot specific things. Then they move on to the 103. The 103 is actually 2 days. And that's where we take a little bit of a deeper dive, right? It's kind of like a myth-busting class to some degree. You know, the people that aren't believers and they have the question of like, oh, well, what happens if the battery dies? Or what happens if it gets dirt on it or gets occluded? Or let's say if I can't get a perfect view of that dot, it's not perfectly centered in the glass, what do I do then? So we have 2 days of just kind of busting those myths, right? We give you all sorts of techniques to work through those scenarios, right? We also spend a good amount of time on zeroing the optic itself to give you a good understanding of where you should be zeroing the optic, and then giving you the knowledge to do that as well.
Sky's the limit on advancements. You're going to see different colored dots coming out. You're going to see 64 minute of angle dots along with 2 minute of angle dots mixed together, different size reticles. You're going to see the size of the optics change dramatically. You may even see some of the optics now built into the slides of the pistol.
Pistol-mounted red dots become as common on pistols as rifle red dots. It's just going to be something that everybody runs, and you know, iron sights may eventually not even show up on pistol slides. I mean, there are some competition pistols already that have a red dot mounted and no backup iron sights. So I think that's the direction you're going to see things go, and it's exciting to be a part of that. Specifically as a product manager for pistol mounted red dots, it's an exciting time to be involved for sure.
Okay, if you're running iron sights, clearly you hate technology and you hate change, so I'm going to need to see your flip phone, your pager, and your Blockbuster video card, if you would please.
Terrific.